What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show for a quarterback showcase episode of the program here after week 4. Myself, Trevor, Sikkema, and Seth, Galina. We're going to talk about some impactful quarterback performances, not just from week 4. Obviously, we'll talk about week 4, but sort of the trends that we're seeing throughout the NFL season here with a couple of them. We're going to talk about Justin Fields and what feels like night and day difference from Justin Fields that we are seeing this year, what that means to the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. We're going to talk about Dak Prescott a little bit. Had a good game this past week, but overall, is it something where Dak's going to be able to replicate some of the things that we saw last year when he was playing at a very high level, or are there some underlying concerns? Then we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield. Really great offensive showing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers so far this season, but specifically in week 4 against the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to talk about what is firing on all cylinders and allowing them to click there in Tampa Bay. Seth, how are we doing, my friend?
Good. I wanted to bring up something that's very important.
Yes, go ahead.
I contend that the PFF network of podcasts has the best intro music of any podcast network.
Are you being paid to say this?
Well, I mean, yes, I am literally being paid to say it. But I just wanted the people to know that I'm a company man.
Yep. It's good.
And I will do anything for this company.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is good. Yeah, keep saying that, because you said that a guy, 3 weeks ago, you said that there was a guy walking outside of your house every time that we're about to start the show, and we came to the conclusion that that's Chris, obviously. And so, just as we're starting the show, and he's making his first couple of rounds. I'm kidding, obviously. Everybody, calm down. Somebody would actually believe that, but I'm kidding. No, look, the funky jazz. It's good intro music. So even the people who aren't watching this on YouTube and are audio only, they're getting the flavor. They're getting hyped up. They're ready to talk some quarterbacks, as am I. The first name that you brought to the table of guys that we wanted to talk about here today, or that you wanted to talk about specifically, was Justin Fields, who is having a hell of a season, right? He signs a 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's in this quarterback battle with Russell Wilson, but it never really felt like a quarterback battle. It felt like Russell Wilson was going to get that job. Russ doesn't start the season because of an injury, and now I don't really know how you go back to Russell Wilson as a default with how well Justin Fields is playing. 6 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. He did have his first turnover-worthy play this past week against the Indianapolis Colts, but almost 1,000 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. He's not lighting the world on fire, but you go to adjusted completion percentage, it's the best of his career, over 80%. You look at some of his stats against the Indianapolis Colts, and it wasn't his best day, but certainly when you look at Justin Fields and how he has played over the last couple of years, Seth, it felt like when the Indianapolis Colts got up in this game, the earlier versions of Justin Fields, you would basically just mail it in. You'd be like, all right, well, we're on to next week. And he's playing at a level where you don't really get to think that anymore if you're an opposing defense. And if you're a Steelers fan, it's got to be great news to them. So when you have watched Justin Fields through the first 4 weeks of this season, what have you seen from him and some of the progressions?
Well, I think they're a fascinating team right now, the whole Pittsburgh Steelers. And with that offense, they're 3-1, and they really could be 4-0. They're like a bad snap away from being 4-0, potentially. And if I were to tell you before the season that was the case, that was going to be their record, so close to being undefeated after 4 weeks, you would have said the defense is playing lights out, which they are. It's, again, a top defense, top 5 defense. But you would have said they're running the football really well. They're doing all the other things other than just drop back passing. They're running the football really well. They're screening it really well. The play action game is doing great, and Justin Fields is using his legs. And none of that's true on this offense. Now, I will say the caveat is it is right now kind of a mid-table in terms of efficiency on offense. But I kind of believe it has a chance to turn the corner, because I think some of the underlying metrics have been really good and really paint a good picture going forward. Like I said, can't run the football, can't play action, can't screen. And the play action stuff is the thing where I'm really interested in them going forward. They're calling play action a lot, something the Steelers fans will be amazed to know that a team is allowed to do, considering the last 4 years of Steelers football. They're the number 1 play action team in terms of volume, but they're not having those big plays. And Arthur Smith is known for that stuff. We've seen him have really good play action offenses over his years in Tennessee and then in Atlanta. even with kind of mid quarterbacks, the fact that they haven't hit any really chunky playoff play action tells me they're gonna hit some.
Yeah, right.
And they kind of need that in that offense because like right now, they really don't have an ability to create outside of kind of George Pickens down the field
Right.
on the sideline. Justin Fields is not a quarterback that's going to throw over the middle of the field unless it's off play action. So you get that ability to say, okay, we can control the entire field now. They're doing a good job throwing outside the numbers. Again, when you have George Pickens down the sideline, you can do that. But they haven't been able to throw between the numbers on drop back pass. Now, Fields' pass grade, his passing grade, PFF passing grade on drop back passes is like top 5. So I just look at it and say, like, he's doing really good things. You talk about the turnover worthy plays. He's not putting the ball in harm's way. He's checking
Right.
down the ball accurately. His accuracy metrics are the top that he's had in his career so far. Again, it's only 4 games. So the fact that all those kind of underlying metrics are really good and the offense has kind of just been mid, I think there's a chance that it breaks out and it could happen against this Cowboys team on Sunday night.
I've been so impressed with what Fields has been able to do, and so, like this past week was a little bit tougher. I think that it was the performance in which he looked the most confident. Like I went back and I watched some things against the Indianapolis Colts, and I'm not sure if they were just doing things post snap that he wasn't expecting to see, but there were a couple of instances where it's a cover 2 situation to the sideline. He's got the flat route. The cornerback isn't dropping deep. You had I can't remember if it was a corner route or just a vertical route where you had the whole shot. Like he actually had the ability to hit that in between where the corner was and the safety was, and he didn't take it because I think for some reason he looked over in that direction and he was like, oh, I didn't really think that I would have this open here. Whether or not that was George Pickens, I think maybe goes into this play. I can't remember if the wide receiver was him or not because it's been the George Pickens show. I mean, you mentioned how much better this offense can even be, and that's really saying something because it is a really good passing offense right now. They're playing the game very efficiently, and yet they're still not hitting on play action. We think that will come at some point in time, and there's not really any other options outside of Pickens. They're basically running this passing offense through one guy. He has a 25.8% threat percentage so far this season, which is by far the most on the team. And then when you talk about passes of 10 or more yards down the field, like you said, they don't do it a ton. Pickens is 64.3% of the threat percentage on this team when throwing the ball 10 or more yards down the field. It's basically the only player that he looks at. So, look, I know that Roman Wilson was a healthy scratch this past week, but they kind of need him to get up to speed because they sort of need him to be like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type of a player when you throw in Pat Freiermuth as well. Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, I think that they will give you some splash plays, here and there some weeks, but I don't think that they're players that Justin Fields is going to particularly rely on unless it's underneath stuff. So I also have been really impressed. It was a tougher day for Fields. You get behind the 8 ball and you really got to be able to come back in the passing game. But again, sort of how I set this up. If I was watching the Bears version of Justin Fields, I would have given zero thought to them coming back in this game. And he's just a different type of quarterback now. The time to throw is a little bit less. He's more confident. He doesn't think that a check down is the worst thing in the world, and sometimes that's exactly what you need to do. So I have been super impressed with Justin Fields. I really have. And like you said, some of the quote-unquote easy stuff, when they get another wide receiver in this offense, when they're able to hit some of these play-action shots, like it can look even better than what it looks right now. So it is a hat tip to what Fields is doing in this offense.
The concern is the personnel though, because you talk like Roman Wilson, like he's been a healthy scratch. Like I don't know if that changes. Like we don't know. But they need to go and trade for like Devonta Adams right now. Could get Ayuk in the summer. They need to go and get somebody because that's really going to be the concern. And it's not just that; it's the offensive line as well. You lose Troy Fautanu for the season.
Yeah.
He was going to be obviously a big piece as a rookie.
Right.
James Daniels, they just lost their guard. I think he's our highest graded run
Yes,
blocking
he's had an
guard.
awesome year. Yeah.
Um, they lose him for the season. They haven't played, Isaac Samalo hasn't played yet. He'll be back at least. So it's like, you say all this stuff. You're like, hey, everything's trending in the right direction for them to have some breakout performances on offense. And then the personnel just slaps you in the face, basically. You're like, well, it like throws cold water on you when you want to talk about the Steelers team. But yeah, I think the play action stuff is super important because, when I watch them against, the first four games of the season, you're getting a lot of just I hate to call it like rock, paper, scissors, but that's kind of what it is sometimes where it's like, hey, we're gonna call this play action play. A lot of play action designs on offense are really like for a specific coverage, right? There's two receivers running routes. So you need to be able to you're dealing with a very specific thing on offense, and you need to see that very specific thing on defense to be able to throw it. And they just haven't had that. Like you look at the Chargers game where they weren't very good on play action, and Chargers play a lot of zone, and there's routes that are running into Chargers zone defenders, and it's like Arthur Smith has generally been good at finding and like calling them at the right time against the right defense, and they just weren't in that game. You look at the Denver game, Denver plays a lot of man coverage. They don't get separation versus man coverage, and that's a personnel problem.
Right, right.
So it's like I think these things will regress positively. And again, I say it again, but like if there's one team that's going to allow you to have some big holes in coverage, it's right now. It's the Calgary. Jesus, it's the Dallas Cowboys. It's the Calgary Stampeders.
Yeah, I mean they are having a tough year. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. If they're, it's a tough matchup for Calgary, no doubt. No, but I think actually, so what you're saying and what you're explaining, and maybe there's a little bit deeper that you can go with this, but maybe it just kind of is what you said of like certain concepts that you're calling with play action against certain defenses. I don't know if you've seen a trend in any way, shape, or form with like some of the play action plays that the Steelers have called. Like, okay, they're obviously trying to, like you mentioned at the very top, Fields, he's not really a natural at throwing over the middle of the field. So are they calling these play action concepts to open up like the middle of the field? Are they calling them, do you think, to more attack, like more vertically, things like that? But before you answer that question, I think that from what you are saying, it's even more encouraging for Justin Fields that you've noticed that the play action plays that they have called haven't exactly been against the defenses they've wanted to see them against, and yet Fields has not forced the ball into one of those situations. That's huge, because I feel like he absolutely would have done that over the last 3 years. And so, again, those are little things where, I think that I don't say this is an insulting way at all whatsoever, because I view the game like this as well when I'm watching live. You're watching the football. And even when you like watch things back and they'll show the replay and you'll zoom back a little bit, you'll get more of an all 22 angle. Like you could sort of see things, and it's tempting for a quarterback, especially of Justin Fields' talent, to just be like, no, this is the play that we dialed up. I'm going to go trust my guys. I'm going to go throw the football. And I think that got him in trouble a lot when he was in Chicago. And we are just, I really hope I'm not jinxing him here. I hope that we're not jinxing him. But we're just not seeing that from him. He's not pressing like he had been in the past. And I think that the Steelers have a good formula where he doesn't feel like he has to. That didn't really exist for him in Chicago, so maybe there's a little bit that goes into it there. But, specifically when you look at those play action concepts for the Steelers, do you think it's more of opening up that middle of the field? Do you think it's more of taking more of those deep shots? What do you think with how they're sort of dialing these up right now?
Well, I'll put a nice little statistical bow on what you're saying. Justin Fields is tied for the league lead in checkdowns thrown off play action. So like and it's something that you just see all the time, and like he's getting pressure and he's able to get the ball out accurately to the flat, and it's like something where like I'm not saying he's throwing checkdowns and they're going for 50 yards, but you have like a 7-yard sack that is instead a 1-yard gain off a checkdown, which is obviously important.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think with this play action stuff, they are trying to hit the middle of the field on these, and they just, like I said, they just haven't been able to. There's two types of play action that they do. Well, two types of play action that every team does. there's that like play action where you set up in the pocket, and there's play action where you boot around the corner. They're a heavy play action boot around the corner team. And he's thrown to the flat a lot in those instances, and they haven't had that. So on these type of plays, usually it's a 3-level concept. So you have a low route, a medium route, and a deeper route. The deeper route is generally a takeoff, like run away, just run really fast down the field, and it'll expose kind of the coverage, but we're not really going to throw that route. But we're really trying to get is that chunk play with a receiver coming at like 15 yards from the backside of the formation, running across the field. And they haven't hit that play. They've run it a lot. They're very high in their plays where they run boots. They haven't hit that route a lot. They've thrown to the flat route a lot. That'll just happen. Like eventually they're good. Like you can't, I don't know if there's really like a thing that defenses are doing other than like they're just in the way often of that route. So I think that'll regress back to the mean. When you look at where they're trying to hit the ball, when they drop back, when they play action and stay in the pocket for Fields, it's that same area. It's like that 15 to 25 yard range between the numbers. They just haven't hit that route. Again, it's partly a defense thing, partly a play calling thing, but I think it's something that will regress back to the mean. And if it does, and Justin Fields keeps playing kind of turnover-free football and keeps playing well in the drop-back passing game, in the quick game, he's been really good in quick game, slants and quick outs and hitches and stuff like that, then I think there's a chance this offense really explodes. Again, the water that I'm pouring on myself is really the personnel is not great.
Right.
But like, why not be excited? Like, why not think that this is Justin Fields turning the corner? Like, I don't know. Like Arthur Smith is a really good OC, and I think that helps a lot. But I hope, you know what I mean. This is a guy that I really thought was a good player coming out of Ohio State. Mm-hmm. I very quickly decided maybe he's not that guy. And I think it would just be fun if he did become that guy in his second stint.
Yeah, clearly, the building blocks that he's putting down can lead to a very fun quarterback, like what you said, like what he was at Ohio State, and it's understandable when you get through the timeline of how Chicago, I think when you look at what they're able to do on offense and the receiving game they have now, I mean, even now they're struggling on the offensive line, but Chicago had the worst receiving core in the NFL 2 years ago, right? And so it's like, I don't think the people who were defending Justin Fields while he was in Chicago were necessarily like completely wrong. I do still think that it was time to move on, especially with the opportunity to draft Caleb Williams at number 1 overall. You sort of reset the timeline there with the rookie contract window, and I think it was right to move on. But there are legitimate reasons, I don't even want to call them excuses, as to why Fields was maybe taking a little bit longer to get to this point. But now he's in a new situation. He gets to have sort of a new identity as a quarterback, and I think he's really embracing that. And I think that you're right. When we get to the point where the more intermediate stuff is going to be open, can he hit that consistently? Because now you're talking about an offense that, like you said, is going to be humming, and that's one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. I think it's always going to be a great front throughout the season as long as those guys are healthy. So that's going to make for a great defense, especially with some studs that you have behind him as well. So Steelers defense, they're going to hold up their end of the bargain, it feels like, for a large portion of this season, as Mike Tomlin's units often do. And if Justin Fields can continue to give them a little bit of juice there, they got to get way better at just traditional run game. I mean, because you said, like, they stay for as good as Justin Fields has been, they want to run the football, and it's just, you look at Najee Harris's numbers, like before contact, it's not good. And the offensive line's got to get better. Unfortunately, the injuries make it a little bit tougher, but it is exciting to watch Fields. Fields is making up for some of those deficiencies, and he's becoming a version of the quarterback that we saw. I don't even want to say like at Ohio State. He's becoming like a different type of quarterback that's even more efficient, and it's better. It's this sort of like Renaissance Justin Fields of what a lot of people thought wasn't possible. He's giving us a glimpse of that, and saying it is. I want to talk about Dak Prescott, because I think that's going to be important to get into. But before we get into that, whether it's a TD, a tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you want to call a touchdown, one thing is for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams, defense, we don't care how they score them. Just want to bet on touchdowns. Simple as that. DraftKings is the number one place to bet on touchdowns this season. If you are ready to place your first bet, try bet on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown, right? Seth's talking about a matchup between the Steelers and the Cowboys. Cowboys might have some holes on their defensive side of things. If you think one of those Steelers players is in for a breakout and you think it's going to be on the receiving end of one of those good Justin Fields passes, throw $5 down. If you throw $5 down, guess what else you get? $200 in bonus bets instantly if you're a new DraftKings customer. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet on touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the promo code PFF. It's promo code PFF. For new customers, get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Over at DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. If you've got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY, or you just text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, visit dkng.co/FTBALL. Seth, you wanted to talk about Dak, and Dak did have his best game of the season this past week. 22 for 27, 221 passing yards, one big-time throw, 0 turnover-worthy plays here for the Dallas Cowboys this past weekend. They win against the New York Giants. It's not a great opponent. I understand that, but a win is a win is a win, as they say. He has not gotten off to the best start. Now, you could sort of understand maybe a little slow start to the season because 64.5 passing grade so far this year, but his highest, an 83.4 passing grade this past week on Thursday Night Football against the New York Giants. Seth, was that more of like, hey, you're just going up against a Giants team that's not really playing well at this point in time? Or is this sort of like a bigger issue with Dak? Like, do we have problems that we need to think about? Because he was playing at an MVP level last year for the Cowboys, and we haven't seen him really hit that. Again, we saw him maybe a little bit this past weekend, but I'm wondering if that was just more the Giants than Dak really bouncing back to his 2023 form. What are you seeing when you're watching the Cowboys offense here with Dak?
Well, I think the first thing we have to put to bed, and probably shouldn't even have to do this, but like Dak is a really good quarterback. Like there's no doubt. I think that was put to bed last year with all the MVP numbers that he was putting up, especially in the second half of the season. He's really good. He deserves to get that much money to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks. But what's happening now is, especially as he's gotten older and he's had some injuries to his legs, he's not the runner that he used to be. Mm-hmm. And so when things change in the offense and get worse around him, there's like a multiplier effect. So you're playing with tackles that aren't very good right now. I know they just signed Terrence Steele to a big extension, but you have a rookie playing left tackle. You have Terrence Steele playing right tackle. It's not good. Your secondary receiving options outside of CeeDee Lamb are not good.
Right.
CeeDee Lamb this year has not been. He'll figure it out. I guarantee you. But besides like one or two plays a game, like you're not seeing the separation from CeeDee Lamb. Just not being able to separate like at the break point that we normally associate with a guy who has that type of wiggle and body control and stuff like that. So if all those things are just slightly worse, it's gonna have a much bigger effect on this offense as a whole and on this passing game. And that's really what we're seeing. Like Dak is always going to be a good quarterback. It's just they're not getting anything into Brandon Cooks, not getting anything into Jalen Tolbert. You had Jake Ferguson was injured. And I also think one of their issues is, they want to play with one tight end on the field, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. The issue is when you do that, you get into a situation where your second best pass catcher is your tight end, but he's also the only tight end in the field. So he has to do tight end stuff while also being the number 2 pass catcher. And Jake Ferguson's a really good player. But if you look at teams like the Chiefs, for example, Noah Gray plays a lot of snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs because they don't want Kelsey as the only tight end on the field.
Sure. Right. Right.
And especially now, going forward with Kelsey, he is basically their number one option with Rice out. So like they're going to see obviously a lot more of even more Noah Gray, maybe even three tight ends on the field for the Chiefs. But that we saw that last year and with the Cowboys, and it really allowed them to kind of free up Ferguson. They're not doing that anymore. They traded, I forgot his name, but they traded one of the tight ends to Kansas City. Schoonmaker has not been able to get on the field. I think it was Hendershot. They traded Hendershot. Schoonmaker has not been able to get on the field. So it's like, well, like these are some of the issues. Can't run the ball either. Like that's
Right. That's obviously really bad for them. Like there's no relief. It feels like it is just the CeeDee Lamb show. And I'm even watching this past week against the Giants, and a lot of Dak's best plays. I mean, and I'm not like saying this just to like pump Dak up, but like it's elite timing and placement throws. I mean, like it's in breaking stuff where these wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb included, I watched this with CeeDee Lamb receptions. He's covered. Like he's completely covered with press coverage or at least close coverage, maybe not exactly on line of scrimmage, but they're waiting for the in-breaking route. They're able to time it well. Dak has just such great timing and placement with the ball being a little bit lower and getting there exactly when it needs to, that a couple of those passes were completed for first down specifically. And I'm like, man, that just looks more difficult than it should be on a consistent basis. And that is what it feels like. So, you watch more Dak than I have just this season, but with his struggles, do you just think that it's an extension of the fact that the Cowboys are not good enough in the run game? There's no relief there. There's no extra tight ends that they can really rely on. Brandon Cooks, like you said, is not giving them what they need as a wide receiver too, especially for an offense that wants to be as potent as the Cowboys can be. Is that simply what it is? Do you think it's less of a Dak problem, some of these lower passing grades, and more of just an overall, the Cowboys offense is not structured to succeed the way that it was last year or the way that we were maybe predicting it could have been this year?
I would put it more on the offense than Dak. I'm not saying Dak's been perfect. His accuracy numbers are the worst of his career so far. And honestly, they're like bottom 5. I do think a lot of that is tight window throws, right? Like it's tough to be consistently accurate when you got to make the perfect throw every single time.
Right.
And that's what they're getting in this offense, is just having to make the perfect throw every single time. And the run game is no run game. They're going to be down in games a lot because the defense, I don't know what we're going to get out of this defense going forward. If we're missing DeMarcus Lawrence, we're getting a Micah Parsons on a bad ankle. Mm-hmm. And I would say teams have been able to mitigate some of that pass rush already this season. You saw it with the Saints, you saw it with the Ravens, even a little bit with the Giants offensive line and offense that has struggled for 3 seasons with this Cowboys defensive line. And they were able to do some stuff that, again, mitigated these awesome pass rushers on the outside. And you know what? I want to talk about the defense a little bit because this might be more of the downfall of the Cowboys this season. They can't cover anybody, man. It is rough. And I think so much of they're missing Deron Bland.
Right. Right.
Hopefully he comes back and he's a difference maker like he was last year. But their coverage unit was boosted by the pass rush. I mean, that's not saying anything that no one knows about football.
And the takeaways, right? I mean, like that's been the thing with the Cowboys over the last 3 years is pass rush and crazy amount of takeaways.
Well, how do you get crazy amount of takeaways? You know that ball is coming out hot because that quarterback doesn't want to stand in the pocket. You can undercut balls and you can make a lot of plays. And like Trevon Diggs is a fine corner, but he's not the 11 interception corner we might have thought he was. Like he gives up a lot of separation and a lot of them. And like, they played with Andrew Booth last Thursday. Like that's not a winning business model. Carson was injured. Bland, like I said, Bland is injured. So like they need someone there. They can't stop the run. like Mozzie Smith had his best game as a pro. And if you're getting that type of Mozzie Smith going forward, then we're good. But that's just one game out of, 18 that he's played in his career that haven't been really good. So I get really worried about the Cowboys. And I say that as someone who maybe bet the Cowboys to win the division, and now I'm very nervous about it. So like, because I thought Dak is too good, CeeDee Lamb is too good. They'll figure out all the other issues, and that just hasn't happened. And it's you're getting a little nervous now. Luckily, the Philadelphia Eagles also have their share of issues. But yeah, maybe it's the Washington Commanders division.
I'm not saying this to like pat myself on the back because it's 4 games and a lot can happen throughout the NFL season. But I thought the Cowboys were in for a big regression this year. Even with an experienced guy like Mike Zimmer coming in, like I just don't think people gave Dan Quinn the credit he deserved for that defense being as good as it's been over the last couple of years. And with his departure, especially to a team in the division, I thought the Commanders were going to be a little bit better. And I thought this was a year where Dallas is going to miss out on the playoffs. But it is worse than I thought it was going to be. Like I still thought that this team could potentially win double digits, somewhere a little bit above 500. And they're struggling right now. There's no doubt about it. And Dak basically has to be superhuman for this team in its current state to be able to win football games, and he hasn't even been that. And it's hard to be too hard on him for it because you go, hey, why aren't you the MVP that you were last year? And it's like, well, it's kind of tough for that to be the expectation, right? So we will see. We will see if something gets better. Obviously, like the cavalry's not coming in the run game. Maybe the offensive line can get better as the season goes on because they haven't played very well so far, but I don't think Brandon Cooks is turning into, an elite receiver in the second half of the season. Jalen Tolbert, I feel like is sort of he's sort of like a deep threat receiver who they're asking to be a lot more at this point, and the ROI, the early ROIs are low for them. So we will see what happens, and I think that this is a big matchup that they have coming up, obviously, with the Steelers, because if you drop this one and, if the Steelers offense can look more explosive than they have been in the past, then you really got to sit here. And if the defensive line cannot get pressure on this beat-up Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line, now all of a sudden you're talking about a situation where you're going to have to panic a little bit. As much as you can or should maybe 5 weeks into the season for the Dallas Cowboys. So we'll see what happens moving forward. I do want to get into a great game that Baker Mayfield and offensive coordinator Liam Cohen had this weekend to sort of round things out. But before we do that, got to shout out our friends over at Cherry Bunny. It is the performance drink that is fueling the health-lete revolution, as they say. It's a really, I genuinely had one for the first time yesterday, and I took my first sip, and our video guy Tyler can attest to this. I looked at the bottle and was like, how are they doing this? I don't really understand. Because normally, tart cherry, it's very sour, like it's tough to drink. I sometimes like that kinds of stuff, but I got to be in the mood for it. Honestly, this has that tart cherry, the positives, but it's just a really easy drink to have. Natural product with natural ingredients to get, and no added sugar. It's got the highest antioxidants because of the tart cherries. That makes it natural anti-inflammatory as well. It's all about sort of like post-workout stuff. If you're pushing your body, it's really great. Increased recovery. It can help improve sleep as well with naturally occurring melatonin. Helps support immunity because it'd be good for you if you drink it regularly as well. 500 collegiate programs use it. 10 of the last 11 Super Bowl champs have used it. 66 out of 67 Power 4 conferences, kind of weird to say Power 4 now, but Power 4 conferences, and every NCAA football and basketball national champion has used this product since 2007. It is battle-tested to the very top, and a lot of athletes love it for the recovery and the benefits that it has. Go check out Cherry Bunny. They've got a couple of different products. They've got some instant recovery stuff. Obviously, the drink that I said that I had. I gotta get the pouch. I gotta try the pouch as well, because I feel like that's like the concentrate stuff. Like that could be really great after workout. So I'm gonna check that out as well. I'm gonna report back next week after I try that. But products are available on Amazon, cherrybunny.com, and retailers nationwide, including places like Publix and Kroger, things like that. So check it out, Cherry Bunny. If you're an active lifestyle at all, check them out and get that into your workout regimen and be able to recover faster and train better and all that good stuff. Baker Mayfield, Bucs offense, Really good day. Todd Bowles has Jalen Hurts' number. I mean, going back to the last 3 years, I mean, the Eagles just cannot play well against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so I kind of figured that would be what happens on that side of the ball. But for the Bucs to look as potent as they did, I know some Eagles fans out there would be like, well, Sirianni didn't have the team ready. Regardless, this is a great offensive performance for Baker Mayfield and Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator. Specifically, Seth, I want to highlight the early down work. I don't know what you're going to highlight about Baker and what Cohen are doing, but specifically, you can see on the screen there, early down work, first and second down, okay, which the Bucs really struggled to know exactly what to do in the last year Byron Leftwich, certainly, and then a little bit with Dave Canales last year as well. Struggled to know what to do on early downs, especially when it came to passing. This past week against the Eagles, 89.9 passing grade on first and second down, fourth highest EPA per play on early downs, 2 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays, and an 85.3 adjusted completion percentage. You brought this up a little bit with Justin Fields, how he had a bad habit of sometimes taking a 7-yard sack instead of a check down for a 1-yard gain because he didn't like the 1-yard gain. It didn't sound sexy. It wasn't like the throw that he wanted to make. It felt like that was a little bit of the Bucs' problem over the last couple of years. And when you see that 85.3 adjusted completion percentage on that early down work, that means the ball is getting where it needs to go, and you are starting things out in a positive manner for the series and for the drive. That's a very important part of what's going on here. I felt like Mayfield and Cohen were so confident in what they were about to see from the defensive side of things that it was really great work. But what did you think about this connection this past week as the Bucs really took it to the Philadelphia Eagles defense?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that, well, you talk about Baker, like so much of his improvement the last 2 years has been with his feet and been with his ability to set his feet and not have these weird. I always go back to this interception he threw, I want to say in 21, maybe 20, against Green Bay when he was still with Cleveland, where like his ankle is almost twisted. He's trying to make a throw and his ankle is almost twisted backwards while he's throwing forward because his feet were bad. Like his feet regressed to the point where he wasn't under control when he was making throws, and it's so much better now. He's still going to be a guy who takes a lot of sacks when he's pressured, but because he's not a mover, he's not an escape guy, but if you can get the coverages to be a little more basic, and that's what you get on first down, well, he can throw with confidence and he can make all these throws. I mean, that's never been a concern for him. He can make all the throws. He still probably has a little bit of an issue layering throws because he throws the ball hard, even if it's like a 2-yard check down. But, like, I think I don't know if he'll ever be an elite quarterback, but if he plays with the confidence and the footwork that he's playing with now, and he has the last 2 years and did for spurts or longer spurts in Cleveland, like I think there's a lot to like. And obviously, the tackles are good. Wirfs and Gedeke are good. They have issues on the interior, but with Mike Evans, you're pretty much always in a good spot. Like you're pretty much always in a good spot. Their concern is going to be if someone can take away Mike Evans man to man, like we saw 2 weeks ago with Denver. Patrick Surtain comes up, absolutely. I mean, we don't have to say anything about Patrick Surtain. He's unbelievable. But he was able to kind of shut down Mike Evans one-on-one. If that gets taken away, now we have concerns, right? And we saw it in that Denver game. But if you're playing against an Eagles team that's going to play off coverage, that doesn't want to get tight to routes, that's going to disguise in a way that kind of prevents them from getting tight to routes on defense, it's all day. It's going to be way too easy for this offense. I don't know what their identity is on offense other than Liam Cohen calling the right plays at the right time. And I know that's like bad analysis, but that's kind of what it feels like sometimes. But you put a lot of confidence in your quarterback when you say, hey, when I call this play, we're going to get this coverage. You're going to look here to there, and that's it. You're going to get the ball off. Like, man, it's great. It's really nice for a quarterback to have that. And it's like, I don't know what the future holds for Baker Mayfield, but it's really fun to watch right now.
Yeah, certainly. I think that they're clicking and the confidence is there. And having that confidence with offensive coordinator and quarterback, I think is what every team is shooting for, what's going on in Tampa Bay. I think some Bucs fans that might be listening to this are like, whoa, like Chris Godwin's playing really well. Like, what's this like? And obviously, like, Chris is playing really well. But sort of like to your point, when you can fully take away Evans, even if Chris Godwin goes off a little bit, you need someone else to step up somewhere within the passing game. And there's been, like Kate Otton's had some catches, Trey Palmer's had some catches, right? Like you're bringing in like Jalen McMillan when he's been healthy. And so you have some guys who can supplement it there, but obviously it's much easier as an offense coordinator with Baker Mayfield, just overall sort of a duh statement, when you're able to rely on both of those guys, because it did feel like in the 2 games where Evans was really quiet, the Bucs struggled. Offense was tougher to come by, certainly against the Denver Broncos, and then I think it was that Lions game as well, where they ended up winning the game. Obviously, it was a super gutsy performance. It was great to get that win on the road, not taking anything away from them. But the margin for error is so much less when teams sell out and completely take away Mike Evans, whereas we saw this past weekend against Philadelphia, both of those guys were going off, right? Chris Godwin had big catches, Mike Evans had big catches, and like it's just a much smoother offense when a team doesn't dedicate itself to really just take away one of those options. And if you take away Mike, okay, then you're basically saying Chris Godwin's got to have a 100+ yard game and at least a touchdown for us to lose this contest. And I think that might be a game plan that you see teams operate with moving forward. But just, again, the early down confidence of knowing what you're going to see on base defenses and first down. Because you're also, the team does want to stay pretty balanced, right? That Bucky Irving is running the ball well. Rachaad White is as well. They're still kind of trying to figure out a little bit of, what sort of blocking schemes they want in front of each guy. John Ledyard and I talked about that last week, how it's actually been funny. It's been very different. Like they're trying to run. They want to be more of a zone running team, but they're not very good at it. So they're trying to give Rachaad White these runs behind, mid and outside zone, and he's not grading well because the offensive line's just not very good at it. But then when they put Bucky Irving in the game, they go, all right, it's the rookie. Let's get back to the bread and butter. Let's, call some man and gap concepts between the tackles. And then they block very well, and then Bucky Irving's numbers are better. So maybe that's a split that they just continue to go with throughout the rest of the year. Maybe they change it up a little bit when each backs are in there. So they're even still trying to figure out things within the run game, iron some stuff out before they really get humming. But very clearly in the passing game, Cohen, who has been around the league a long time. He's a wide receivers coach for the Rams for, I think, 3 seasons before he goes over to Kentucky. He's their offensive coordinator there with Will Levis that 1 year. Then he goes back to L.A. for 1 season to be the offensive coordinator in L.A. Then he goes back to Kentucky because he wasn't really calling the plays in L.A. He's able to call the plays again in Kentucky. Now he's calling the plays as the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. And so he's had a lot of experience around some good offensive minds, obviously with Sean McVay during his many years that he was with the Rams. Some experience at the college level, making sure that he's been a seasoned play caller. And coming into it now with Tampa Bay, it just feels like him and Baker are on the same page. And it's a really successful offense right now. Baker Mayfield had the fastest time to throw of any quarterback this past week. 2.08. I mean, that ball's coming out immediately. And to your point, that means that what the defense is showing you is exactly what you think it's going to be for the play that you're about to run. And that's just a hat tip to how well these guys are preparing and how they're on the same page.
Yeah, well, you talk about the running game. I mean, like this has been a problem for a long time, and it's last 2 weeks the running game's been really good, like as in terms of our efficiency metrics. So I don't know if that continues. I think you'd be pretty hopeful given that the spark that Bucky Irving has provided.
Right.
And if that's the case, then all of a sudden this team even looks better. I mean, this is a team that went to the playoffs, that won a playoff game. They were not a great team last year. But I think if you can get the running game going, now you can take some pressure off of, again, to me, it really goes back to Mike Evans. If you talked about, Chris Godwin, really, really good player, no doubt. Mike Evans is a future Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at, again, I go back to the Denver game. When you look at what Denver was able to do because one player cornerback, number 2 for the Denver Broncos, was able to take away one player instead of it being, okay, now we're going to roll our whole coverage to Mike Evans.
Sure, right.
Now Godwin is there all day. Now the other guys are there, McMillan, Palmer, Sterling Shepard making a play. Like, now that changes things. And there aren't a lot of guys. I mean, that's, and at the end of the day, like, how many guys can go one-on-one with Mike Evans?
Right.
There just aren't a lot. So I think that's where they're going to have problems, but I just don't foresee that being something that happens game in, game out. And then, so they have problems 2 weeks ago against Denver, and now you go against an Eagles team that can't cover anyone to save their lives. And we're back to being this really high flying, super effective offense. So I think Mike Evans is the reason this offense moves or does not move.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go back to the confidence thing with Baker Mayfield, and I see it when you look at all these guys that come from the Shanahan system, the McVay system. It's like they're so good at game planning. They're so good at, and what it does is, and we've heard about this from Shanahan back in the day. I remember there's a quote from Austin Hooper, who played tight end for him with Atlanta. And he'd just be like, how on Monday mornings in our meeting or Tuesday morning in our meeting, he'd be like, hey, when we call this play, it's because this so-and-so is going to happen. And then they would go into a game and the exact same thing would happen in game that he would say that would happen on Tuesdays or Mondays or whatever. And you see that with all these guys, and it gives them so much confidence. You see it with Tua. Look at the difference in Tua from year one and then having Mike McDaniel. Like,
yeah,
hey, it'll be there. And I think there's a lot of that with Baker Mayfield and Liam Cohen. Like, it's going to be there. Have confidence. Don't, just take your drop back, take your hitch, and make a play. And then you get a little bit more of Baker Mayfield being able to make a little bit more out of structure. When he's had to move off his spot, he's been not a total disaster. And that's been a problem. He's not an escape guy at all. So he takes a lot of sacks when he's pressured. He's doing that a lot this year again, but he's able to stay away from being pressured a lot more because he's moving better in the pocket before pressure gets there, like seeing it before it happens. And that's been really good for the Bucs.
The absence of hesitation is such an important part of every aspect of NFL play. And going back to what you were talking about with Mike Evans, it seems like an obvious sort of duh to say this, but when you are, it's a really good shout out by you, when you are able to take away the other team's best wide receiver option with just one guy, a Sauce Gardner, a Patrick Surtain, a Jair Alexander, a Jalen Ramsey, like whatever it is, when you are able to do that, the math advantage that you have throughout the rest of the defense is so huge. And so that is a really interesting call out by you. Obviously, again, it's no disrespect to Chris Godwin, but if you're able to take away Mike Evans with one player and then you're able to rotate coverage to have multiple players to bracket or have eyes on Chris Godwin on the other side, that's a win for the defense every single time. So how Mike continues to play this season against CB1s and against single coverage is going to be huge, because if another team doesn't have a player who can hang with Mike Evans, and you mentioned there's not many of them, then it's hard to think that Tampa doesn't have a firepower advantage against most defenses that they're going to go up against. And when you're dealing with quarterbacks that have that sort of confidence, you can see the results like what we have seen from Tampa Bay already. Appreciate everybody watching and listening to this episode of the Quarterback Showcase here on the PFF NFL Show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Seth Galina. We will be back with you next week for some more quarterback analysis following Week 5 of the NFL season. See you guys then.